Snow White. Once upon a time, in the heart of winter, a queen sat by her window, sewing. The window frame was made of black ebony, and as she looked out at the freshly fallen snow, she pricked her finger with the needle. 3 drops of red blood fell onto the white snow. The contrast was so striking that she sighed and thought to herself, "Oh, if only I had a child with skin as white as this snow, lips as red as this blood, and hair as black as the ebony frame." A year later, the queen's wish came true. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. They named her Snow White. But tragically, the queen passed away shortly after. The king, in his grief, soon married another woman. The new queen was exceptionally beautiful, but she was also incredibly vain and wicked. Her most prized possession was a magic mirror. Every single day she would stand before it and ask the same question: "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And every day the mirror would reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." This pleased her, for she knew the mirror could only speak the truth. But Snow White grew more beautiful with each passing year. One day, the queen stood before her mirror and asked her usual question. To her horror, the mirror gave a different answer. "My queen, you are fair, it is true, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen was consumed by jealousy and rage. She couldn't bear the thought of anyone being more beautiful than her. So she summoned a huntsman and gave him a terrible order. "Take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. As proof, I want you to bring me back her heart." The huntsman led the innocent princess into the woods. But when he raised his weapon, he found he couldn't do it. Snow White was so young and lovely, she begged for her life, her eyes filled with tears. The huntsman's heart softened. He told her to run away and never come back. To deceive the queen, he killed a young deer instead and brought its heart back to the palace. Alone and terrified, Snow White ran deeper and deeper into the forest. She ran until her feet were sore and the sun began to set. Just as she was about to give up, she stumbled upon a tiny cottage. Hesitantly, she peeked inside. The house was small and tidy. On a little table, 7 tiny plates were set with 7 tiny cups, and against the wall stood 7 little beds, all in a row. Exhausted and hungry, she took a little bit of food from each plate and a sip from each cup, not wanting to take everything from just one. Then she tried the little beds, but none were quite right until she pushed them all together and finally fell into a deep sleep. Later that evening, the owners of the cottage returned. They were 7 dwarfs who worked all day mining for gold in the mountains. As they entered their home, they knew something was wrong. The first dwarf cried, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" The second asked, "Who's been eating from my plate?" And the third, "Who's been drinking from my cup?" They looked around until the 7th dwarf, who was looking at his bed, whispered, "Look, someone is sleeping in our beds." They all gathered around with their lanterns, and when the light fell upon the sleeping girl, they gasped in amazement. "Oh, what a beautiful child," they whispered, careful not to wake her. The next morning, when Snow White woke up and saw the 7 dwarfs staring at her, she was startled, but they were very kind. She told them her name and the story of her wicked stepmother. The dwarfs felt sorry for her and offered her a deal. The oldest dwarf said, "If you will keep house for us, cook, make the beds, wash, sew, and knit, and keep everything clean and orderly, then you can stay with us, and you shall have everything you want." Snow White happily agreed, so she stayed with the dwarfs, keeping their little cottage neat and tidy. Every morning, before they left for the mountains, they would warn her, "Be careful. Don't let anyone into the house while we're gone. Your stepmother will soon find out you are here." And they were right. Back at the palace, the queen, believing Snow White was gone forever, went to her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" she asked, expecting the old answer, but the mirror replied, "My queen, you are the fairest here, so true. But Snow White, over the hills with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen trembled with fury. She had been tricked. Snow White was still alive. She immediately began plotting a new, more devious plan. Disguising herself as an old peddler woman, she traveled over the 7 mountains to the dwarf's cottage. She carried a basket of shiny red apples. Knocking on the door, she called out, "Pretty things to sell, pretty things to sell." Snow White peeked out the window and said, "Good day, good woman. What do you have to sell?" The old woman held up a beautiful, glistening apple, half red and half white. "Lovely apples. Would you like to try one, my dear?" Snow White was tempted but remembered the dwarf's warning. "I'm not allowed to let anyone in," she said. The cunning queen replied, "Are you afraid of poison? Look, I will cut the apple in 2. You eat the red half, and I will eat the white half." What Snow White didn't know was that only the red side was poisoned. The queen took a bite of the harmless white side, and seeing this, Snow White lost her suspicion. She reached out and took the poisoned half of the apple. The moment she took a single bite, she fell to the ground as if dead. The queen laughed wickedly, white as snow, red as blood, black as ebony. "This time the dwarfs won't be able to wake you." When the dwarfs came home that evening, they found Snow White lying lifelessly on the floor. They were heartbroken. They tried everything to revive her, but nothing worked. She looked so peaceful and beautiful, as if she were only sleeping. So they couldn't bring themselves to bury her in the cold, dark ground. Instead, they made a beautiful coffin of glass so they could see her from all sides. They placed her inside and carried her to the top of a mountain, and one of them always stayed to watch over her for a long, long time. Snow White lay in the glass coffin, unchanging, looking as if she were only asleep. One day, a prince was riding through the forest and came upon the dwarf's cottage. He saw the coffin on the mountain and the beautiful maiden inside. He was so captivated by her beauty that he fell instantly in love. He pleaded with the dwarfs, "Let me have the coffin. I will give you whatever you want for it." The dwarfs initially refused, but the prince's grief was so genuine that they took pity on him and agreed. The prince had his servants carry the glass coffin away. As they were carrying it down the mountain, one of them stumbled over a tree root. The jolt dislodged the piece of poisoned apple that was stuck in Snow White's throat. She coughed, the apple piece flew out, and she opened her eyes. "Where am I?" she asked, sitting up. The prince, overjoyed, rushed to her side. He explained everything that had happened. "I love you more than anything in the world," he said. "Come with me to my father's castle and be my wife." Snow White agreed, and a grand wedding was planned. The wicked queen, still believing she was the fairest, was also invited to the feast. Before she left, she asked her mirror one last time, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror answered, "My queen, you are the fairest here. It's true, but the young queen is 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen shrieked in anger, but her curiosity was too great. She had to see this new queen for herself. But when she arrived at the wedding and saw that the bride was none other than Snow White, she was frozen with shock and fear. What happened to the evil queen next is a tale told in many ways. Some say she was so filled with rage and terror that she collapsed and was never seen again. Others tell a more grim fate, but one thing is for certain: Snow White was finally free from her wicked stepmother. She and the prince were married, and they ruled their kingdom with kindness and grace, living happily ever after. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this classic fairy tale, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. We'll see you in the next video.